So hang on, we got two Megazords that were basically Transformers, and now when we finally have a 5-Zord combo, it isn't even called a Megazord? Power Rangers in space just loved flipping things on its head. Enter the Mega Voyager, a great combiner that had its name carried over exactly from the Sentai, almost like a tribute to their source footage in a year when they thought the show was ending for good, or possibly just an acknowledgement that they were now using such English sounding names in Japan, it was easier and slightly lazier to just call it the same thing. I wonder if at some point they considered calling it Voyager Megazord. Bit of a mouthful though, and as it's adorned with two rather blatant MV symbols, I kind of understand why they stuck with it. And as a break to the usual Megazord naming convention, I think it's fine and it actually ends up being really memorable. I had to check this, but it first appeared in Power Rangers in Space episode 17, and it went on to make 15 episodic appearances, culminating in it getting destroyed. Seriously, what was with the second Turbo team getting their Megazords destroyed all the time? This one went one episode after the Delta Megazord was also destroyed in the penultimate episode before the two-part finale. But I'm digressing to its demise when for its whole tenure it was considered to be the most powerful Megazord of the season, questionably more powerful than the Astro Delta combination, but with a bigger track record of wins overall, we'll let it take the mantle. Finally, the 5 main Space Rangers had a Zord each, and they winningly explained it as being Zordon who had hidden the Zords for them. I guess he did all of this either before Mighty Morphin started, or possibly more likely when he and Alpha left Earth the year before during Turbo. Anyway, at the time it all felt like this cool explanation that their mentor had somehow mapped out this whole roadmap of events, and almost like he knew it was going to happen. It was gratifying somehow, and it makes you wonder how many other Megazords could be hidden across the cosmos. Kind of surprising really that they've not pulled that card or key card in the show again since. And after Astro and Delta had adjusted our perception of what a Megazord could be, this was actually the one we'd been waiting for. Despite the Rangers still being relatively new, this was still the Zordon era. And not only were the 5 original colours back for the first time since Mighty Morphin, but the Megazord also harkened back to the beginning as well, with the M symbols and colour scheme, and the shield being part of the Black Ranger Zord. Obviously it was all just a coincidence to being from the Megaranger footage from Japan, but what a great coincidence it was. The toy history. Well, at least in the Japanese Sentai series, the decision to give the Rangers 3 Megazords in one season really helped establish a new pattern for the first time, and kind of carried on at what Kaku Ranger started in de-emphasizing the need for an Ultrazord Carrier Zord. We got an impression of that the year before with Artillatron being a Carrier Zord that wasn't an Ultrazord, but turning what was traditionally the Carrier Zord slot over to yet another Megazord. And the way they did it so masterfully by making just one of them the traditional 5-Zord combiner, I think really helped to justify why each season could support multiple Megazords. It obviously released in 1997 as part of Denji's Sentai Megaranger, excuse the pronunciation, but Ginga Gatai, or Galaxy Combiner, DX Mega Voyager. Then a year later, fall 1998, it came to America for Power Rangers with the exact same name. Here in the UK, I know I got it as a Christmas present. I'm pretty sure it was at the end of 99, as we were still operating a year behind you guys. Fun anecdote for Power Rangers, that the Zord names come from being plastered so egregiously across each Zord that America just decided to go along with what Japan had decided, despite the fact that in Megaranger the same Zords had different names entirely. Talking the design, I think it's fair to say that the designs for these Zords throw out all but the kitchen sink. After already getting 2 ships and a shuttle, here's 5 more space-related vehicles that really start to push the concept to the end of the line. Red Ranger's Mega V1 resembles an astronaut with a big jet propulsion style backpack, which doubled as missile batteries on the show. The toy isn't quite as flexible as the show version, I mean when is it? But they did add elbow articulation for the first time on one of these humanoid Zords. A very well appreciated feature which you actually do need to take advantage of in order to fit them in his back for the combination. I'm getting ahead of myself. Black Ranger's Mega V2 is another space shuttle, but proportionally different to the one included with Astro Megazord. It seems to be based more on an American or I guess Japanese spaceship. In show lore it had blasters on both wings, but there's no sign of them on the toy. You're probably better off pretending that what becomes the shield handle is a cannon. Blue Ranger's Mega V3, it's a rocket. It's super long, it's very fragile. It can and does unfortunately split apart due to the weight of it stressing the quite fragile connection method. In happier news, it does have really well hidden tracks to support a land-based mode and can serve as a mount for the shuttle, or as joked in the show, a taxi service for the astronaut as he can't keep up with the rest of the Zords. Yellow Ranger's Mega V4. This one apparently based on a saucer, like a flying saucer, and it's actually one of the sleeker looking Zords. Kind of reminds me of a more compact version of the Astro Mega ship. And similar to Mega V2, apparently this had laser cannons in the nose of it, but no sign of them on the toy. And Pink Ranger's Mega V5, well, there's no missing the artillery power on this tank thing. 2 giant cannons on top and 2 sleds on the bottom, which I guess would make navigating planets made of ice easier. They can actually be folded in because of the Megazord mode, so even though on the show it flew through space with them out, you can fold them in too if you think it looks better. Once together as a Mega Voyager, the design is very striking. It feels totally different to the last 5 Zord combiner, which was the Turbo Rescue Megazord, as this time the Zords are very much hidden within the transformation. I'd say that the last one to do that this well was the Super Zeo Megazord, where other than the obvious of the Ranger's coloured symbol shapes, the uniform grey colour scheme meant that you couldn't really tell where one Zord ends and another began. Another thing similar to the Super Zeo Megazord is that we again have a very symmetrical stacking assembly method. New though was that this was the first Megazord to have plenty of Zord parts left over, but it still found a place for them as weaponry. As well as the shield, the Mega V3 rocket ended up being the unusual but thematically fitting finisher. Looking at it again now, it feels both retro and cutting edge. The half moon arm shapes with the edge on the outside, the chest grille made up of these like engine exhausts, the mix of curved and flat edges, just managing to make it the right side of unique. What are the differences to the original? You were basically just getting the Japanese toy for significantly less money. How they ever afforded to do this, I'm guessing the late 90s oil price was going in their favour or something. The only thing I would like to know is if the Mega V1 Zord was as brittle in Japan as ours was in America. We'll get on to that next. But yeah, we even got the metal hinges in the shoulders and shins of Mega V1. It's almost poetic that the only Zord to have parts made of metal is also the one with the most brittle plastic. Oh hey, what's bad about it then? Yeah, quality of plastic. So I alluded to this when I started the Turbo Zord reviews, that after that year, the plastic quality problems that until then had only affected a few weapon parts really started to creep into the Megazords themselves. For most people, the red and yellow Zords are the big offenders here, and the 2 Zords you'll want to pay the closest attention to if you're ever trying to buy one on the aftermarket. In terms of Mega V1, it's the slightly translucent red plastic that makes up the majority of the body piece. This is already a massive warning sign, as there's no structural integrity to it. For many people, this Zord has broken in the chest area the force of the blue cover piece that locks over it for Megazord mode, causing a lot of pressure when either locking it on or pulling it back off. There's no release button, so you're literally just pulling 2 pieces of plastic apart against each other. I've got off relatively easy so far, just losing part of its antenna, but I do wonder if somehow temperature might be one of the causes of the problem for this one. Either way, I know mine wouldn't survive a fall, it would literally just shatter, which isn't something I would say about most of Bandai's Zords. On the subject of brittle plastic, while filming this review, 2 of the 4 tab pieces which keep the mid part of the Mega V3 rocket intact snapped clean off. I could try glue them back on, but for the purpose of these shots they're not on it, and luckily it has just enough friction to hold without. It's actually Mega V4 which has been the most troublesome for me. It becomes the arms and sort of chest plate of the Megazord. The left arm on mine broke, which seems to be another common theme for this toy. I actually managed to get a replacement off eBay. I think it was the first time I ever replaced a Zord. While researching for this review, I found a story on collectiondx.com that someone else had this problem several years after the release and Bandai replaced it for them for free. That's really good of them, but I think it also shows that there was definitely an issue with this thing, that they were holding on to replacement parts years later. Something else bad about Mega Voyager arguably is how much gets left over. It's fine in theory, but I just think the Black Ranger Zord should have been more involved. It ends up just as the head and doesn't actually require any transformation to get there. You could argue that Kimberly was just the head in the Ninja Megazord, but that was sort of like an origami crane thing. Carlos' Zord does also get to be the shield, however the design of it is just so basic. All they did was stick a massive MV sticker on there. I think it would have been smarter if they could have had a little bit of transformation here. Maybe if the tail fin of the shuttle had folded back into the handle, and maybe if you could have split the wings and folded it into kind of a square shape. Yeah, I think lack of any transformation feature is what hurts Mega V2, especially given that every other Mega V Zord has at least 3 transformation movements of their own. For Mega V3's missile mode, it's a shame that the rocket doesn't actually launch. They did give us spring-loaded fists in the last Megazord, so weird that they couldn't make it work here, but again, maybe it's just the power of it. I wonder if it was either deliberate, an attempt maybe to avoid scuffing the top of the missile, or an accident and it is meant to fire and it just didn't get designed well enough. Zord wheels, or lack thereof, is also something less than stellar. We know they didn't do any for Delta, but they did for the Astro Megaship. They were also coming off a year where everything had wheels. So kind of strange that Mega V2 and 3 both have pieces that are meant to represent either wheels or rotating treads, but they're only solid. What would have been nice is extra arm articulation. I don't mean elbows, but rather shoulder articulation. The pose it would take in the show when it fired the Mega Missile is to have its left arm out, counterbalance for weight. It's not actually possible on the toy, but I hope it's something that gets considered if it's ever remade in more of a collector grade. And finally, what's good about it? Well, the Mega Voyager definitely takes you on a trip through such a unique transformation. Sometimes when changing Power Ranger Megazords, you're like, yeah, I've seen that before. And this one definitely recycles a few ideas, mainly Mega V1 being very similar to the Red Shogun Zord. As we've mentioned, Mega V2's beheaded head being quite similar to the Ninja and I guess Shogun Megazords. And of course Mega V3, 4 and 5 feeling similar to the construction method of the Super Zeo Megazord. That being the Zords stacking and splitting to form legs, and yellow being both of the arms again. But for Bandai and Toei's designers, it must have needed such an effort to work out how to get everything to fit and work. I think this shows such a confidence by the design team to understand what to do, and proportionally you're left with a really great looking robot. It's a Megazord that feels like it really makes the most of the space theme. And the finisher weapon is definitely unique and looks far more intimidating than the equivalent puny blasters that came with the Turbo Rescue Megazord the year before. No, there's no power sword with this one, but it can utilise the Astro Megazord saber if you want it to. So you can really get those mirror bookends to the Dino Megazord sword and shield mode going if you want. As the last of the Zordon era Megazords, it feels like a good conclusion. That's just a hair taller than Astro Megazord, and only slightly smaller than the Astro Delta combination. Even after so many different designs in 6 years, this one still manages to impress me, and I remember back then just having to have it. It is a great toy, unfortunately one on the countdown to destruction of itself as the plastic continues to degrade over time. I'll certainly continue to look after mine, and I'm quite lucky in that I have the box, as I think suspending them separately in polystyrene must help take the pressure off them when not in use. Possibly wrapping Mega V1 in bubble wrap or something to kind of take the stress off it should enable you to get a few more years out of him yet. Maybe something to consider if you have one of your own that you're worried about now, sorry. How then was the Rangers Mega Voyage for you? Does your OCD kick in that they didn't call it Megazord? Let me know in the comments. For the next retro review, we'll of course be covering the Silver Rangers Mega Winger. What was the final on-screen Zord of the season? And though I don't have one of my own, we can't not mention the third and final return of a certain Brachiosaurus. Dinosaurs in space, guys. What a time the 90s were. Probably giving the Dino Charge Plesiosaurus ideas for 16 years later. Thanks all of you for watching, for those of you that subscribe, to any of you currently watching this as a premiere with me, and those that keep your comments coming in whenever. You guys are the best. Bonus points of course for the Instagram crowd. That is it for today, until the next time, see you later.